HOA Karen towed my electric car from my own garage, citing gas-powered vehicles only. I never thought I'd be sharing this story, but after everything that happened, I feel like others need to hear about the absolutely insane situation I found myself in last year. It all started when I moved into what seemed like a perfect suburban neighborhood in Northern Virginia, just outside of D.C. The house was beautiful, the community was well maintained, and everything looked pristine. Little did I know that behind this perfect facade lurked a homeowners association, HOA board member, who would turn my life upside down over my Tesla Model 3. I'm a software developer, and after years of saving and planning, I finally bought my dream car, a sleek blue Tesla Model 3. It wasn't just about having a cool car. I genuinely wanted to reduce my carbon footprint and take advantage of the amazing technology. The house I bought had a 2-car garage, perfect for my new Tesla and my wife's Subaru. Everything seemed great for the first few months. Enter Karen Thompson, the HOA board's vice president and self-appointed community standards enforcer. I first met her during the neighborhood's monthly meeting, where she spent 20 minutes ranting about someone's unapproved garden gnome. She was in her mid-50s, with that typical, "Can I speak to your manager" haircut, and she carried around a massive binder full of HOA regulations, like it was the Holy Bible. "Mr. Wilson," she cornered me after the meeting, clutching her binder, "I noticed you recently moved in. Have you thoroughly reviewed our community guidelines?" "Yes, I have," I replied politely, though I'll admit I'd only skimmed the massive document. Everything seems pretty straightforward. She pursed her lips, looking like she'd just bitten into a lemon. "Well, make sure you pay special attention to Section 7, regarding vehicle requirements. We have very specific standards here." I nodded and walked away, not thinking much of it. Big mistake. 3 weeks later, I woke up to get ready for work and found my garage empty. My Tesla was gone. At first, I thought I was losing my mind. Had someone broken in? Had I somehow sleepwalked and parked it somewhere else? I immediately checked my security cameras. Thank God I had installed them, and what I saw made my blood boil. At 2:30 a.m., a tow truck had pulled up to my house. Karen Thompson herself was there, directing the driver as they somehow got my garage door open and towed my car away. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. They had broken into my garage and stolen my car. I immediately called the police and then called the towing company listed on the sign at the entrance of our community. The conversation with the towing company went something like this. "Good morning, Lightning Fast Towing." "Yes, hi, my car was towed from my garage last night. My private, closed garage." "Address?" I gave them my address, and the operator pulled up the record. "Oh yes, vehicle was in violation of HOA Regulations, Section 7.3.4. All vehicles must be gas-powered, unless explicitly approved by the board. Electric vehicles pose a fire hazard and are not permitted in enclosed spaces." I nearly dropped my phone. "Are you serious? That's not even a real regulation, and you can't tow a car from a private garage." "Sir, we have proper authorization from your HOA board. You'll need to take this up with them. The retrieval fee is $450, plus $75 per day of storage." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Could you please email me a copy of the authorization and the specific regulations cited?" "You'll need to contact your HOA for those documents, sir." I hung up and immediately called my lawyer, Evelyn Brown, whom I'd fortunately met through a friend a few months earlier. She answered despite the early hour, and as I explained the situation, I could hear her typing furiously in the background. "James, this is absolutely illegal on multiple levels," she said. "First, they committed breaking and entering. Second, they stole your vehicle. Third, that regulation they're citing doesn't exist in any HOA documents I can find online. Fourth, even if it did exist, it would be unenforceable as it discriminates against electric vehicle owners, which is protected under state law. Stay put, I'm coming over." While waiting for Evelyn, I decided to document everything. I downloaded the security footage, took pictures of my empty garage, and started going through my HOA documents. As I suspected, there was absolutely nothing about gas-powered vehicles only. The closest thing was a general clause about vehicles needing to be in working order and not pose any hazard to the community. Evelyn arrived within an hour, looking ready for battle in her suit despite the early hour. We immediately went to the police station to file a formal report. The officers were incredibly interested when they saw the security footage. "Ma'am, just to be clear," one officer said to Evelyn, "the HOA board member directed the towing company to break into a private garage and remove a vehicle?" "That's correct, Officer Johnson," Evelyn replied. "We have it all on video." The officer shook his head in disbelief. "I've seen some crazy HOA stories, but this takes the cake. We'll need copies of all this documentation." While at the station, I received a text from my neighbor Tom. "Dude, Karen's out front putting notices on everyone's door about a new emergency HOA meeting tonight. Something about addressing the electric vehicle menace in our community. What did you do to piss her off?" Smiley face. I showed the text to Evelyn, who actually smiled. "Perfect, we'll attend that meeting. But first, let's get your car back." What followed was one of the most satisfying mornings of my life. Evelyn, 2 police officers, and I went to the towing company. The owner started sweating as soon as he saw the police and Evelyn's law firm badge. "Let me get this straight," Evelyn said, her voice deadly calm. "You accepted instructions from a private citizen to break into someone's garage and remove their vehicle, without any court order or proper municipal authorization?" The owner started stammering. We had HOA authorization. HOAs don't have the authority to order breaking and entering," Officer Johnson cut in. "This could be considered grand theft auto." My car was returned within minutes, no fees charged. The towing company owner practically begged us not to press charges, explaining that Karen had shown them apparently official HOA documents authorizing the tow. Evelyn took copies of everything they had. But we weren't done, not by a long shot. The emergency HOA meeting that evening was held in our community center, and it seemed like everyone had shown up. Karen stood at the front, her binder now supplemented with a PowerPoint presentation titled, "The Electric Vehicle Threat." I walked in with Evelyn just as Karen was mid-rant. "These electric cars are ticking time bombs," Karen was saying, pointing to a badly photoshopped picture of an exploding Tesla. "Do you want your children to die because some tech-obsessed millennials want to feel special?" "Excuse me," Evelyn spoke up, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "I'm Evelyn Brown, representing Mr. James Wilson. Before this meeting continues, I need to address some serious legal issues." Karen's face went through several interesting colors. "This is a private HOA meeting. You have no right to be here." Actually, one of the other board members, an elderly gentleman named Mr. Peterson, spoke up. "As Mr. Wilson's legal representative, she has every right to be here. And I, for one, would like to hear what she has to say, especially after receiving some disturbing security camera footage this morning." The room went dead silent. Evelyn walked to the front, connected her laptop to the projector, and played the footage of Karen directing the theft of my car. "What we're looking at here is breaking and entering, grand theft auto, and possible fraud, given the falsified HOA documents presented to the towing company," Evelyn explained calmly. "Additionally, attempting to ban electric vehicles is a violation of state law." "Those regulations are real," Karen protested, flipping through her binder frantically. "I added them last month." "Added them?" Mr. Peterson's voice could have frozen hell. "Karen, board members can't unilaterally add regulations without a full board vote and community notification." What followed was 2 hours of the most intense HOA meeting in history. It turned out Karen had been gradually adding her own regulations to the community guidelines for months, everything from banning certain colors of garden hoses to requiring all holiday decorations to be Christmas-themed only, none of that multicultural nonsense. The other board members were horrified. Homeowners were furious. Karen tried to defend herself, but with each attempt, she just dug herself deeper. "I am trying to protect our property values," she shrieked. "These electric cars will destroy our community's character. Next thing you know, they'll want to install solar panels and wind turbines in their yards. Actually, another homeowner spoke up, I've been thinking about solar panels. They increase property values by an average of 4.1%. The meeting ended with a unanimous vote, minus Karen, to remove her from the board immediately. But that wasn't the end of our legal actions. Evelyn helped me file a civil suit against Karen personally for the break-in, theft, and emotional distress. We also filed complaints against the HOA itself, though we later dropped those when it became clear the board had been unaware of Karen's actions, and they agreed to implement new oversight measures. The legal proceedings took about 6 months. Karen hired and fired 3 different lawyers, each time claiming they were conspiring against her. The final hearing was almost anticlimactic. The evidence was overwhelming, and Karen's own testimony did her no favors. "Your Honor," she actually said, "if we allow electric vehicles today, what's next? Hovercrafts? Flying cars? Space shuttles in our garages?" The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, just stared at her for a long moment before delivering her verdict. Karen was ordered to pay $50,000 in damages, plus all legal fees. She was also served with a restraining order preventing her from coming within 100 feet of my property or vehicle. The cherry on top? The judge specifically noted that any future HOA in our state that attempts to ban electric vehicles would face significant legal penalties. 2 weeks after the verdict, Karen's house went up for sale. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she was moving to a more traditional community in Florida. Good riddance. The aftermath of this whole ordeal actually brought our community closer together. The HOA board was completely restructured, with new bylaws requiring transparency and regular audits. We even started an annual Green Initiative program, encouraging environmentally friendly home improvements. Tom, my neighbor who texted me about the emergency meeting, ended up buying a Tesla Model Y after seeing how well my car handled the whole ordeal, and probably also because his wife fell in love with my car's tech features during the investigation when they were helping document everything. The towing company, facing potential criminal charges, agreed to a settlement that included mandatory training for all their employees about property rights and proper towing procedures. They also donated a significant sum to a local environmental charity as part of their community service agreement. Mr. Peterson, the elderly board member who supported us during the meeting, became the new board president. Under his leadership, our community has actually become a model for other HOAs in the area. He even invited me to help draft new guidelines for electric vehicle charging stations and other eco-friendly improvements. Evelyn, my lawyer, still jokes about the case whenever we meet for coffee. She's used it as an example in several legal seminars about property rights and HOA limitations. The case of the electric car crusader, as she calls it, has apparently become something of a legend in local legal circles. As for me, I still drive my Tesla Model 3, now with a custom license plate that reads, "No Karen." Perhaps a bit petty, but after everything that happened, I felt entitled to a small victory lap. My security cameras are still up, though these days they mostly just record the occasional curious neighbor admiring the car. The whole experience taught me several valuable lessons. First, always read your HOA documents thoroughly, and keep copies of the original versions. Second, security cameras are worth their weight in gold. Third, having a good lawyer on speed dial is never a bad idea. And finally, sometimes standing up to unreasonable people not only helps you but can lead to positive changes for an entire community. Last week, I received an unexpected package. It was a small trophy from the local Tesla Owners Club, engraved with "Champion of Electric Vehicle Rights." Apparently, my case has been used to help other EV owners dealing with similar HOA issues across the state. It now sits proudly on my home office desk, right next to a framed copy of the judge's verdict. Life in our community has returned to normal, though with some improvements. Our annual block party now features an electric vehicle showcase, where owners can show off their cars and answer questions from interested neighbors. We've installed community charging stations in our common areas, and solar panels have started appearing on more and more roofs. Sometimes, when I'm driving home and see all these positive changes, I almost want to thank Karen. Almost. Instead, I just smile, plug in my car in my very private garage, and appreciate how sometimes fighting back against absurdity can lead to unexpected positive changes. Oh, and that garden gnome that Karen was ranting about during my first HOA meeting. It now has pride of place in our community garden, along with a small plaque that reads, "In memory of common sense, may it rest in peace." The owner has since added several more gnomes, each wearing tiny electric vehicle-themed t-shirts. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just winning, it's watching your community grow stronger and better, despite someone's best efforts to keep it stuck in the past. Update: 1 year later. The Karen saga continues. I didn't think I'd need to update this story, but some wild things have happened in the year since I posted about Karen towing my Tesla from my garage. Grab a drink, because this update is pretty intense. Remember how Karen moved to Florida to find a more traditional community? Well, it turns out she didn't exactly learn her lesson. About 6 months after she left, I got a call from Evelyn, my lawyer. "James, you're not going to believe this," she said, trying to hold back laughter. "Karen's being sued by 3 different HOAs in Florida." "What? How is that even possible?" I asked. "Apparently, she's been going from community to community, trying to join their HOA boards and reform them. She's been using our case as an example of how electric vehicles are destroying traditional American neighborhoods. But here's the best part. She's been misrepresenting herself as a certified HOA consultant and charging these communities for her expertise." I had to sit down. "Please tell me you're joking." "It gets better," Evelyn continued. "One of the Florida HOA lawyers found our case while doing background research on her. They reached out to me for details. Want to guess what Karen's been telling people down there?" I'm afraid to ask. "She's been claiming she won our case and that I was her lawyer who helped establish precedent-setting regulations against electric vehicles. She's been using doctored court documents to support her consulting business." That's when things got serious. Evelyn explained that falsifying court documents is a federal offense, and Karen had crossed a line that went way beyond HOA drama. The Florida State Attorney's Office was now involved, and they wanted our help building their case. I agreed to help, of course. Over the next few weeks, I provided copies of all our original documentation, including the security footage of Karen directing the tow truck to break into my garage. Evelyn flew down to Florida twice to give depositions and meet with the prosecutors. Meanwhile, our community had really flourished since Karen left. We'd installed 10 charging stations in common areas, and electric vehicle ownership had increased from just my Tesla to 15 different EVs. The HOA even won a Green Community of the Year award from the county, which included a $50,000 grant for additional environmental improvements. Mr. Peterson, our new HOA president, used the grant to install solar-powered lighting along our walking trails and create a community garden space. The garden now features 23 garden gnomes, each representing a different electric vehicle owner in the community. Mine wears a tiny blue Tesla jacket and holds a miniature "No Karen" license plate. But back to Karen's Florida adventures. The state's investigation revealed she had created a company called Traditional Communities Consulting LLC and had contracted with 5 different HOAs, charging each one between $15,000 and $20,000 for her expertise. Her services included drafting legally proven HOA regulations that would protect communities from the electric vehicle invasion. The Florida prosecutor sent me copies of some of her materials. She had actually created a whole presentation using edited photos from our community, including some she must have taken during that infamous emergency HOA meeting. She'd photoshopped smoke and flames onto pictures of my Tesla, claiming it had nearly destroyed the entire neighborhood. In one particularly bizarre slide, she'd edited a picture of me talking to Evelyn to make it look like I was being arrested. The caption read, "Electric vehicle owner caught attempting to subvert community standards, later convicted." This was accompanied by a completely fabricated news article about how HOAs across Virginia were banning dangerous electric vehicles. Evelyn was livid when she saw these materials. "This isn't just fraud," she said during one of our update calls. "This is defamation. We need to file additional charges." The Florida case moved surprisingly quickly. Karen had made the mistake of targeting several wealthy retirement communities, and their residents included 3 retired judges and a former FBI agent. They didn't appreciate being scammed. The state's case was rock solid. Karen had committed multiple counts of fraud, forgery of official documents, and operating a fraudulent business. But the prosecutors offered her a plea deal. She could avoid jail time if she agreed to pay back all the money she'd taken from the Florida HOAs, 2. Issue public retractions of all her false claims. 3. Dissolve her consulting company. 4. Never serve on any HOA board again. 5. Complete 1,000 hours of community service. Karen, in her infinite wisdom, refused the deal. She hired another lawyer, her 7th at this point, and demanded a jury trial. Her defense strategy, claiming she was the victim of a vast conspiracy by the electric vehicle industry to silence traditional community advocates. The trial lasted 2 weeks. I flew down to testify, as did Evelyn and Mr. Peterson. The prosecution had a field day with Karen's edited materials. They brought in a digital forensics expert who showed exactly how she'd modified the court documents and photos. The expert even found metadata showing she'd started creating these materials while our original case was still ongoing. Karen's testimony was something else entirely. She tried to claim that electric vehicles were part of a foreign plot to destroy American neighborhoods. When the prosecutor asked her about the forged court documents, she insisted that her versions were the real ones and that I must have hacked into the court system to change the records. The jury took less than 2 hours to reach a verdict, guilty on all counts. The judge, clearly unimpressed with Karen's conspiracy theories and lack of remorse, sentenced her to 18 months in prison, $175,000 in fines and restitution, 5 years probation after release, permanent ban from serving on any HOA board or working in property management, required mental health evaluation and treatment. But here's where it gets even more interesting. After the verdict, 3 of Karen's former clients from Florida decided to copy our community's green initiatives. They reached out to Mr. Peterson for advice on transitioning their communities to be more eco-friendly. Now there's a whole network of HOAs across Florida installing charging stations and updating their regulations to be more environmentally conscious. The story got picked up by several news outlets, focusing on the importance of HOA reform and the growing acceptance of electric vehicles in traditional communities. I even got invited to speak at a conference about community modernization and sustainable living. My talk was called From Garage Wars to Green Communities: How One HOA Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Electric Cars. Evelyn's law firm now has a dedicated HOA division, specializing in helping communities update their regulations for modern technology and environmental sustainability. They've handled cases in 12 states so far, and she says our case is still her favorite example of how not to run an HOA. Remember Tom, my neighbor who bought a Tesla after all this started? He's now leading an initiative to create a network of community charging stations across our entire county. The project is called Power to the People. Yeah, he thinks he's clever, and it's actually getting serious attention from local government. No, Karen, Tesla has become something of a local celebrity. People sometimes ask to take pictures with it, especially when they hear the full story. I've even had other HOA boards invite me to speak at their meetings about modernizing their regulations and handling resistance to change. The towing company that Karen used has completely reformed their practices. They now require multiple forms of verification before performing any tow, and they've become strong advocates for property rights. They even sponsor our annual Community Earth Day celebration, which includes an electric vehicle showcase. As for our community, we've gone all in on the future. Solar panels are now on 60% of the homes. We have a wait list for our charging stations, and our property values have increased by 15% more than surrounding neighborhoods. The county uses us as an example of how traditional communities can successfully adapt to changing technologies and environmental needs. Last month, I received an interesting letter. It was from Karen's daughter, who I'd never met. She apologized for her mother's actions and explained that the whole situation had forced their family to finally address her mother's issues with change and control. Karen is now getting the help she needs, and her daughter hopes that someday she'll understand that progress isn't something to fear. The letter included a check for $5,000, money Karen had hidden from the courts in her daughter's account. Her daughter felt it belonged to our community as part of the restitution. We used it to install a butterfly garden next to our charging stations with a small plaque that reads, "Change, like nature, is inevitable. Growth is optional." Mr. Peterson retired from the HOA board last month, but not before helping establish a new set of governance principles that ensure transparency and prevent any future abuse of power. The guidelines specifically address technology adoption and environmental initiatives, with a focus on balancing tradition with progress. We call them the Peterson Principles, and several other HOAs have adopted them. Our story has become a case study in HOA management courses and property law classes. Evelyn gets invited to teach seminars about it, and she always ends with the security camera footage of Karen directing the tow truck. Remember, she tells the students, cameras don't lie, but HOA board members sometimes do. The Garden Gnome collection in our community continues to grow. We're up to 30 now, each representing a different victory for progress in our community. Mine still stands at the entrance, but now it's joined by others wearing solar panel capes, holding tiny wind turbines, and even one riding a miniature electric bicycle. I've learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't just winning a legal battle, it's showing others a better way forward. Our community's transformation from Karen's battleground to a model of modern living proves that change, while sometimes messy and complicated, can lead to amazing results. Just last week, I received an email from a homeowner in Texas facing a similar situation with their HOA over solar panels. I shared our story and our updated regulations with them, and Evelyn's firm is helping them pro bono. It feels good knowing that our experience is helping others stand up for their rights and push their communities forward. The No Karen license plate? I actually changed it recently. It now reads Progress. Because in the end, that's what this whole story was really about, the unstoppable march of progress, and the futility of trying to hold it back with fake rules and manufactured fear. Looking back, I'm thankful for the whole experience. Not because it was fun, it definitely wasn't, but because it showed me and our entire community what we're capable of when we stand together against unreasonable demands and outdated thinking. We're not just a neighborhood anymore, we're a blueprint for how communities can embrace the future while keeping the best parts of their traditional character. And that Garden Gnome Army? It's become a symbol of our community's spirit. Each one represents a small victory in our ongoing mission to show that progress and tradition can coexist, that change doesn't have to be scary, and that sometimes the best way to handle a Karen is to simply prove her wrong, one solar panel and electric car at a time. The end.